Close your eyes. It's no longer 2025, it's 1220. You're in the heart of the Mongol Empire. Around you are tents, horses, and completely different rules for survival. To even finish your first day, you need to learn everything required to stay alive. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight or the sound. It's the smell. A thick, overwhelming mixture of horse sweat, fermented mare's milk, burning dung, and unwashed human bodies packed into animal hides. Your modern nose, accustomed to air fresheners and daily showers, immediately rebels. The stench is so powerful it makes your eyes water, and you haven't even opened them yet. You're lying on something that feels like a lumpy mattress, but as your fingers explore, you realize it's a felt mat stuffed with dried grass and animal hair. The surface beneath is hard, frozen ground covered with layers of thick carpets that do little to cushion your aching bones. Above you, a dome of felt and leather stretches in a perfect circle, supported by a wooden lattice framework. This is a ger, what the outside world would later call a yurt, and it's your new home in the Mongol Empire. The temperature is brutal. Even inside the tent, your breath forms visible clouds in the frigid air. Outside, the wind howls across the steppes with a sound like 1,000 wolves, and you can hear it rattling the tent's felt walls. The only warmth comes from a small fire burning in the center of the ger, fed by dried horse dung that crackles and pops, sending occasional sparks dancing toward the smoke hole at the top. As you slowly sit up, your modern body immediately protests. Your back aches from sleeping on the unforgiving surface. Your joints are stiff from the cold, and your muscles feel like they've been beaten with clubs. This is just the beginning of what your pampered 21st century body will endure in this harsh world, where comfort is a luxury no one can afford. The tent is circular, perhaps 15 feet across, with everything arranged according to strict traditional rules you don't yet understand. To your left, you see saddles, bridles, and other horse equipment hanging from the wooden frame. To your right, there are bags made from animal stomachs, wooden bowls, and what appears to be a leather bag bulging with some kind of liquid. The smell suggests it's arag, fermented mare's milk, the staple drink of the Mongols. Near the fire, shadowy figures move in the dim light. An elderly woman with deeply lined skin and missing teeth tends to a pot hanging over the flames. Her face is weathered like old leather, marked by decades of sun, wind, and bitter cold. She wears a deal, a traditional Mongol robe made from sheep's wool, and her gray hair is braided with small silver ornaments that catch the firelight. Next to her, a middle-aged man sits cross-legged, working on what appears to be a bow. His hands are thick and calloused, his forearms corded with muscle from years of drawing bowstrings and handling horses. Scars crisscross his knuckles and fingers, evidence of countless minor injuries that come with life on the steppes. His eyes, when they briefly glance at you, are sharp and calculating. This is a man who has killed, who has survived raids and battles, who views your modern softness with undisguised contempt. A younger woman, perhaps in her 20s, sits near the tent's edge working on a piece of leather with a curved knife. Her movements are precise and practiced, each cut deliberate. She's beautiful in a harsh way, with high cheekbones and dark eyes that seem to miss nothing. Her hands move with the confidence of someone who has been doing this work since childhood. And you realize that this single piece of leather might become a bridle, a bag, or even part of someone's clothing. In the corner, barely visible in the shadows, children huddle together under a shared blanket. They're silent, which immediately strikes you as odd. Modern children would be chattering, laughing, or complaining. But these children understand that survival depends on conserving energy and staying warm. Their eyes are already hard, aged beyond their years by the realities of nomadic life. The fire is the heart of this small world, and everyone's position relative to it reflects their status in this family hierarchy. The elderly woman, clearly the matriarch, sits closest to the warmth. The man, probably her son or son-in-law, sits across from her. The younger woman occupies a respectful distance, and the children make do with whatever warmth reaches them. You try to speak, to ask where you are or what's happening, but the words that come out are in your modern language, English perhaps, or whatever tongue you speak in 2025. The family members exchange glances, and you see something flicker in their eyes. Suspicion. In the Mongol Empire, strangers who speak foreign languages are either traitors, spies, or enemies. And you, with your soft hands and strange clothes, clearly don't fit the profile of a merchant. The elderly woman barks something in Mongolian, her voice sharp and commanding. The words are completely alien to you, but her tone suggests she's asking questions you can't answer. Who are you? Where do you come from? What do you want? Your inability to respond only deepens their suspicion. The man's hand drifts toward a curved knife at his belt, and you suddenly realize how precarious your situation is. In this world, hospitality is sacred, but it's also conditional. Guests are protected, but enemies are killed without hesitation. And right now, you're teetering on the edge between the two. You try gesturing, pointing to yourself and attempting to convey that you're lost, confused, not a threat. But your movements are clumsy, your desperation obvious. The family watches you with the same attention they might give to a wounded animal, wary, calculating whether you're worth helping or better off put out of your misery. The younger woman says something, and the man nods grimly. She rises with fluid grace and approaches you, the knife still in her hand. Up close, you can see the intricate patterns tooled into the leather of her deal, the silver ornaments in her hair, the way her eyes never quite meet yours directly. She's beautiful, but there's something feral about her beauty, like a wolf that might be tamed but never truly domesticated. She gestures toward the leather bag near the fire, then mimics drinking. It's air egg, and she's offering you some. This is your first test. In Mongol culture, refusing hospitality is a grave insult, but accepting it means you're bound by the complex web of obligations that govern nomadic society. You don't know this yet, but your response will determine whether you're treated as a guest or thrown out into the killing cold. The bag is heavy in your hands, made from what appears to be an entire horse's stomach, complete with the natural valve that serves as a spout. The smell rising from it is sour and alcoholic, like milk gone bad mixed with the faintest hint of barn animals. This is air egg, fermented mare's milk, and it's both food and drink for the Mongols. You take a tentative sip, and your modern palate immediately rebels. The taste is indescribably awful, sour, slightly fizzy, with an aftertaste that combines spoiled dairy with cheap alcohol. Your stomach lurches, and you fight the urge to vomit, but the family is watching, and you sense that this moment is crucial. You force yourself to swallow, then take another sip to show respect. The man nods approvingly, and some of the tension in the chair eases. You've passed the first test, but you have no idea how many more await you. The elderly woman ladles something from the pot into a wooden bowl and hands it to you. It's mutton stew, chunks of fatty sheep meat floating in a greasy broth. The meat is tough and gamey, nothing like the tender cuts you're used to from modern rookery stores. But it's warm, and warmth is life in this frozen world. As you eat, you become aware of the sounds outside the tent. Horses snorting and stamping, their breath visible in the frigid air. Men calling to each other in harsh, guttural voices. The bleating of sheep and goats, the lowing of cattle. This is a nomadic camp, and even in the depths of winter, life continues. Animals must be tended, water must be fetched from holes chopped in frozen streams, and the endless work of survival must go on. The man speaks to you again, his voice patient but firm. He's probably asking about your origins, your family, your intentions. In Mongol society, everyone belongs to someone, a clan, a tribe, a patron. A person without connections is either a slave or a corpse waiting to happen. Your inability to explain yourself in their language or provide the proper social credentials makes you an anomaly. And anomalies are dangerous in a world where survival depends on knowing exactly where everyone stands. The younger woman brings you a deal, a traditional Mongol robe, made from sheep's wool. It's heavy and smells strongly of the animal it came from. But you can immediately feel how much warmer it is than your Ronin clothes. She helps you put it on, her movements efficient and impersonal. She's not being kind, she's being practical. If you're going to survive in their world, you need to dress like them. The robe is surprisingly complex, with multiple layers and an intricate system of ties and belts. The outer layer is made from thick felt, waterproofed with sheep's fat. Underneath is a layer of wool, and closest to your skin is a lining of soft fur. It's like wearing a sleeping bag, but one that allows you to move and work. The craftsmanship is remarkable. Every seam is perfect. Every piece carefully shaped to provide maximum warmth and protection. As you adjust to the strange clothing, you begin to understand just how different this world is from your own. Nothing here is disposable. Everything has been made by hand, using materials that came from animals the family raised, killed, and processed themselves. The leather came from cattle. They herded across the steppes. The wool came from sheep. They sheared each spring. The felt was made by laying out wool and working it with hot water and pressure until it formed a dense, waterproof fabric. The fire needs constant attention, and you watch as the younger woman adds another piece of dried dung to the flames. It's an efficient fuel, burns clean, produces good heat, and is always available wherever there are animals. But it takes skill to manage it properly. Too much at once, and you waste precious fuel. Too little and the fire dies, potentially meaning death in the brutal cold. Outside, the wind picks up, and you hear the tense ropes creaking under the strain. The felt walls bulge inward, then snap back, as if the gyre is breathing. But the structure holds, as it has for countless generations. These tents are marvels of engineering, designed to be portable, warm, and strong enough to withstand the fierce winds of the steppes. The man pulls out a stringed instrument, a mooring core or horsehead fiddle. Its two strings are made from horsehair, its body carved from wood and covered with animal skin. He begins to play, and the sound is unlike anything you've ever heard. It's haunting and beautiful, but also lonely, like the wind across empty grasslands. The melody speaks of vast distances, of isolation, of the endless struggle to survive in a world that offers no comfort. As the music fills the gyre, you realize that you're witnessing something profound. This isn't just entertainment, it's a connection to centuries of tradition, to the ancestors who faced the same challenges, endured the same hardships, and somehow managed to not just survive, but to build an empire that would stretch from Korea to Hungary. The children have crept closer to the fire, their eyes reflecting the flames. They're listening to the music, but they're also studying you, trying to understand what you are and where you fit in their world. One of them, a boy of perhaps 8, has scars on his hands from handling knives and working with leather. Another, a girl slightly younger, watches you with the same calculating look you've seen in the adults. These children are not innocent in the way modern children are innocent. They've seen death, participated in the slaughter of animals, witnessed the harsh realities of nomadic life. They know that weakness means death, that survival depends on strength, skill, and the ability to make hard choices. They're judging you, and you can see in their eyes that they find you wanting. The elderly woman speaks again, and this time her tone is different. Warmer, more maternal. She's apparently decided that you're not a threat, at least not an immediate one. She gestures toward a pile of fours near the wall, indicating that you can sleep there. It's a kindness, but also a practical decision. If you're going to be here, you might as well be useful. And being useful starts with staying alive through the night. As the family prepares for sleep, you begin to understand the rhythms of their life. The fire must be banked but not extinguished. It will provide warmth through the night, and coals for rekindling in the morning. The animals outside must be checked one last time, their shelters secured against the wind. Water must be brought inside so it won't freeze solid before morning. The man steps outside briefly, and you hear him moving around the camp, checking on the horses and other animals. When he returns, his deal is covered with snow, and his face is red with cold. He stamps his feet and rubs his hands together, muttering something that sounds like a curse. The wind is picking up, and you can hear it howling across the steppes like a living thing. As you lie down on the furs, you realize that this is just the beginning. You've survived your first few hours in the Mongol Empire, but you have no idea what tomorrow will bring. You don't know the language, the customs, the skills needed to survive. You don't know how to ride a horse, how to shoot a bow, how to make fire without matches. You don't know which berries are safe to eat, how to find water in the desert, or how to navigate by the stars. The family settles down for the night, their breathing gradually becoming deeper and more regular. But you lie awake, listening to the wind and trying to comprehend the magnitude of your situation. You're not just in a different place, you're in a different world, with different rules, different dangers, and different definitions of what it means to be human. Outside, something howls, a wolf perhaps, or just the wind sounding like one. The horses stamp and snort nervously, and you hear the man rise to check on them again. This is a world where danger is constant, where predators both human and animal are always present, where the line between life and death is measured in degrees of cold, availability of food, and the sharpness of your weapon. As you finally drift off to sleep, your last conscious thought is a realization that will haunt you throughout your time in the Mongol Empire. Everything you thought you knew about survival, about comfort, about what it means to be human, is about to be tested in ways you never imagined possible. Dawn in the Mongol Empire doesn't arrive with the gentle buzz of an alarm clock or the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It comes with the harsh reality of frozen breath, aching joints, and the immediate pressing need to restart the fire before everyone in the jar dies of hypothermia. The temperature has dropped even further during the night, and the felt walls of the tent are stiff with frost. You wake to the sound of the elderly woman moving around the fire pit, her movements careful and deliberate. She's blowing on the banked coals, adding small pieces of dried dung with the patience of someone who knows that rushing this process could mean disaster. A failed fire on a morning like this isn't just an inconvenience, it's a death sentence. Your body feels like it's been beaten with hammers. The hard ground has left you with aches in places you didn't know could ache, and the cold has seeped so deep into your bones that you wonder if you'll ever feel warm again. Your modern body, accustomed to climate control and ergonomic mattresses, is wholly unprepared for this brutal introduction to 13th century nomadic life. The man is already up and moving, though you never heard him rise. He's checking the animals, a task that must be done regardless of weather, illness, or exhaustion. Through the tent flap you can see him moving between the horses, his breath forming great clouds in the frigid air. He's examining each animal for signs of injury or illness, checking their feet for ice, ensuring their rough shelters have held through the night. The younger woman hands you a bowl of what appears to be tea, but when you taste it, you realize it's actually salted butter tea, a mixture of tea leaves, yak butter, and salt churned together into a greasy, salty beverage that tastes nothing like any tea you've ever experienced. Your modern palate rebels against the oily texture and the overwhelming saltiness, but you notice that everyone else is drinking it with obvious satisfaction. This isn't just a beverage, it's liquid survival. The butter provides essential fats that help the body generate heat. The salt replaces electrolytes lost through the constant work of staying warm, and the tea provides a small amount of caffeine to help combat the exhaustion that comes with living in such harsh conditions. Every sip is medicine disguised as morning ritual. The elderly woman ladles more of the mutton stew into wooden bowls, and you realize that this is probably what you'll be eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There are no varied menus here, no fresh fruits or vegetables, no dietary choices. You eat what the animals provide, meat, milk, and blood, or you don't eat at all. The concept of food preference becomes meaningless when food scarcity is a constant threat. As you force down the fatty mutton, you begin to understand the brutal mathematics of nomadic survival. Every calorie must be maximized, every source of nutrition exploited. The Mongols don't just eat meat, they eat organs, blood, bone marrow, and parts of animals that would make a modern person sick just thinking about them. Nothing is wasted because waste equals death. The man returns from checking the animals, and his expression is grim. He speaks rapidly to the women, and you catch the tone of concern in his voice. One of the horses is limping, and in this world, a lame horse isn't just an inconvenience, it's a catastrophe. Horses are transportation, wealth, food, and military power all rolled into one. A nomadic family without healthy horses is a family waiting to die. The younger woman brings you a pair of boots made from felt and leather, waterproofed with sheep's fat. They're enormous and clumsy compared to modern footwear. But as you put them on, you immediately understand their purpose. They're not designed for walking on pavement or looking fashionable. They're engineered for walking through snow, standing in stirrups, and keeping your feet from freezing solid in temperatures that would kill most modern humans. The boots are lined with fur from what appears to be a wolf, and the outside is covered with intricate patterns that aren't just decorative. They're functional. The raised designs help shed water and provide better grip on icy surfaces. The high tops protect your legs from snow and wind, and the thick soles provide insulation from the frozen ground. Getting dressed in Mongol winter clothing is like putting on a suit of armor made from animal parts. Over the deal, you add a heavy coat made from wolf fur, then a vest made from sheep's wool, then leggings made from horse leather. Each layer has a specific purpose, and each has been crafted with the kind of attention to detail that only comes when failure means death. The man gestures for you to follow him outside, and you step into a world that immediately tries to kill you. The wind hits your face like a physical blow, and even with all the layers of clothing, you can feel the cold searching for any gap in your defenses. The air is so dry it burns your lungs, and so cold that your breath creates clouds of ice crystals that fall to the ground with tiny tinkling sounds. The camp is larger than you realized, with perhaps 20 gurs scattered across a sheltered valley. Smoke rises from each tent, and you can see people moving between them like shadows in the morning mist. Children run between the tents, their faces red with cold, but their movements quick and purposeful. They're not playing, they're working, carrying water, tending animals, helping with the countless tasks that keep their families alive. The horses are magnificent. Small, sturdy animals with thick winter coats and intelligent eyes. But they're also clearly products of a harsh environment. Their bodies are compact and muscular, built for endurance rather than speed. Their coats are so thick they look like walking fur balls, and their manes and tails are long and flowing, providing additional protection against the wind. You watch as the man examines the lame horse, his hands moving with practiced skill over the animal's leg. He finds a stone wedged in the hoof and uses a curved knife to carefully remove it. The horse flinches but doesn't fight. It knows the man is trying to help. This is the kind of partnership that defines nomadic life. Human and animal working together against a world that wants to kill them both. The younger woman appears with a bag made from what looks like an entire sheep's stomach. And you realize this is how the Mongols store and transport liquids. The bag is waterproof, lightweight, and when empty, takes up almost no space. But it also smells strongly of the animal it came from. And the idea of drinking from it makes your modern sensibilities recoil. She hands you the bag and gestures toward a hole in the ice of a nearby stream. This is your introduction to Mongol water procurement, a process that involves chopping through several inches of ice with a metal tool, then carefully extracting water without letting the hole freeze over again. The work is exhausting, and the water is so cold it makes your teeth ache. But it's the only source of liquid that won't kill you. As you work, you become aware of how the camp is organized. It's not random. Every jur is positioned according to complex social and practical considerations. The most important families are in the center, protected from wind and enemies. The less important families are on the periphery, serving as an early warning system against attacks. The arrangement can be changed quickly if the camp needs to move, but it always maintains the same basic structure. The animals are organized with the same careful attention to hierarchy and practicality. The horses are closest to the camp, where they can be quickly accessed in case of emergency. The cattle are next, then the sheep and goats. Each type of animal has different needs and provides different benefits, and the Mongols have spent generations learning how to maximize the value of each. You try to help with the morning chores, but your inexperience is immediately obvious. You don't know how to milk a mare, how to properly stack dry dung for fuel, or how to move among the horses without spooking them. Your modern soft hands develop blisters within minutes of starting any physical task, and your lack of calluses marks you as clearly as if you were wearing a sign saying, "I don't belong here." The children watch you with a mixture of amusement and contempt. They're performing tasks that would challenge most modern adults, and they're doing it with the casual competence that comes from years of practice. A 10-year-old girl demonstrates how to properly milk a mare, her small hands working with a skill that would take you months to develop, if you ever could. The mare's milk is warm and foamy, with a taste that's both familiar and alien. It's sweeter than cow's milk, but with a slightly sour undertone that comes from the mare's diet of steppe grass. The girl drinks some directly from the bucket, then offers you some. It's actually not bad, but you can't help thinking about pasteurization and hygiene standards that won't be invented for another 700 years. Breakfast is more of the same mutton stew, but now you're also offered arag that's been aged for several days. The fermentation process has progressed, and the drink is now noticeably alcoholic. It's still sour and unpleasant to your modern palate, but you can feel the warmth spreading through your body as the alcohol takes effect. This is liquid calories and liquid courage, both of which you'll need to survive in this world. The man brings you a curved knife and shows you how to properly hold it. The blade is sharp enough to shave with, and the handle is made from horn that's been shaped to fit perfectly in a human hand. This isn't just a tool, it's a lifeline. In the Mongol Empire, a man without a knife is a man waiting to die. It's used for everything from cutting meat to defending yourself, and knowing how to use it properly is essential for survival. He demonstrates the proper technique for skinning a rabbit. His movements quick and efficient. The rabbit was caught this morning in a trap, and every part of it will be you. The meat will be eaten. The fur will be used for clothing or bedding. The bones will be made into tools or ornaments. And even the sinew will be used for thread. This is survival at its most basic level. Nothing is wasted because waste equals death. You try to copy his movements, but your inexperienced hands are clumsy and slow. You nick yourself with the knife, and the man shakes his head disapprovingly. In this world, clumsiness isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. A badly placed cut can become infected, and infection can mean death. Every movement must be deliberate. Every action must serve a purpose. The younger woman brings you a bow and shows you how to string it. The bow is made from horn, sinew, and wood, laminated together in a process that takes months to complete. It's shorter than the longbows you might be familiar with from European history, but it's incredibly powerful and accurate. This is the weapon that will help the Mongols conquer half the world. And learning to use it isn't optional, it's essential for survival. Drawing the bow requires strength you don't possess. The draw weight is enormous, probably well over 100 pounds, and your modern muscles simply aren't up to the task. The woman demonstrates the proper form, her back and shoulders working in perfect coordination to bring the string to her cheek. When she releases, the arrow flies with a sound like ripping silk, burying itself in a target 30 yards away. Your attempts are embarrassing. You can barely draw the string halfway, and when you do manage to loose an arrow, it falls far short of the target. The children giggle, and even the adults shake their heads. In a world where archery skills can mean the difference between eating and starving, between defending your family and watching them die, your incompetence is more than just amusing. It's potentially fatal. The man takes you to see the horses up close, and you realize that these animals are nothing like the gentle riding horses you might have encountered in modern times. These are war horses, bred for speed, endurance, and aggression. They're smaller than modern horses but incredibly tough, capable of traveling enormous distances on minimal food and water. Their eyes are intelligent and alert, and they watch you with the same weariness they show toward potential predator. Getting on a horse without stirrups is a skill that takes years to master, but the man expects you to learn it immediately. He demonstrates the proper technique, a running leap that ends with you somehow landing on the horse's back. But when you try it, you end up face first in the snow. The horse looks at you with what seems like disdain, and you begin to understand why the Mongols have such a low opinion of people who can't ride. The saddle, when you finally manage to stay on long enough to use one, is unlike anything you've ever experienced. It's high in front and back, designed to keep you seated during combat, and it's covered with layers of felt and leather that provide some protection against the elements. But it's also incredibly uncomfortable. And after just a few minutes of riding, you understand why Mongols are supposedly bow-legged. The horse's gait is unlike anything you've experienced. It's not smooth like a modern trained horse. It's jarring and unpredictable, and you find yourself bouncing around like a sack of grain. The man rides easily, his body moving in perfect harmony with his mount, but you can barely stay on even when the horse is walking slowly. Lunch is dried meat and more arag, eaten while sitting on the frozen ground. The meat is tough and salty, preserved by being cut into thin strips and dried in the sun and wind. It's incredibly nutritious and will keep for months without spoiling. But it's also difficult to chew and has a strong, gamey taste that takes getting used to. You gnaw on it like a dog with a bone, while the Mongols eat it with casual ease. The afternoon brings lessons in fire making, and you discover that starting a fire without matches is incredibly difficult. The man shows you how to use flint and steel, how to prepare tinder from dried grass and shredded bark, and how to nurse a tiny spark into a flame. Your modern hands are soft and unpracticed, and you can't get the technique right. Your attempts produce sparks but no fire, and you begin to understand how people could freeze to death, even with all the materials they need to stay warm. The woman teaches you how to felt wool, a process that involves laying out raw wool, sprinkling it with hot water, and then working it with your hands until it forms a dense, waterproof fabric. It's back-breaking work that takes hours, and the result is a material that's essential for survival in the harsh steppe climate. Your modern hands blister and crack from the work, but you begin to understand the incredible skill and patience required to create the materials that keep these people alive. Evening brings more lessons in basic survival skills. You learn how to properly bank a fire so it will last through the night, how to arrange sleeping furs for maximum warmth, and how to position yourself in the tent to avoid the worst drafts. Each skill seems simple in theory, but requires practice and experience to master. The man takes you outside to look at the stars, and you realize that these people navigate by celestial signs you've never learned to read. The constellations are the same ones you might recognize from modern times, but the Mongols see them as a map that tells them where they are, which direction they're traveling, and what season it is. This is knowledge that could save your life, but it would take years to acquire. As you settle down for your second night in the Mongol Empire, you realize that you've learned more about survival in one day than in your entire modern life. But you've also learned how much you don't know, and how unprepared you are for this world. Every skill you've attempted has been a failure, every task a struggle, every moment a reminder of how soft and helpless your modern life has made you. The wind howls outside the tent, and you listen to the sounds of the camp settling down for the night. Animals shifting in their shelters, people moving between tents, the crackle of fires being banked for the night. This is a world where survival depends on constant vigilance, endless work, and skills that take a lifetime to master. As you drift off to sleep, you realize that you've survived your second day in the Mongol Empire. But just barely. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new lessons in survival, and new reminders of how unprepared you are for this harsh world. The learning curve is steep, and the penalty for failure is death. Your third morning in the Mongol Empire begins with a harsh lesson in social hierarchy that nearly gets you killed. You wake to the sound of shouting and the thunder of hoofbeats, and through the tent flap, you see riders approaching the camp at full gallop. These aren't the casual horsemen you've grown accustomed to. These are warriors, their weapons gleaming in the morning sun, their faces hard with authority and the casual violence that comes with absolute power. The elderly woman hisses something urgent and pushes you toward the back of the tent, behind a stack of felt blankets. Her movements are quick and frightened, and you suddenly understand that your presence here isn't just unusual. It's potentially catastrophic for the family that took you in. In the Mongol Empire, harboring strangers without proper authorization can be seen as treason, and treason has only one punishment. The man who had been teaching you to ride yesterday emerges from the tent with his head bowed, his entire posture radiating submission. This is the same person who had seemed so confident and skilled, but now he looks like a peasant facing his lord. The transformation is complete and terrifying. You're witnessing the absolute power that defines Mongol society, where life and death decisions are made by those who have earned their position through violence and conquest. Through a gap in the tent wall, you watch as the lead rider dismounts. He's clearly a Noyan, a Mongol military commander, identifiable by his elaborate armor and the way the other riders defer to him. His deal is made from silk and fur. His weapons are decorated with silver and gold, and his horse is larger and better fed than any you've seen in the camp. This is wealth and power made manifest, and it's backed by the absolute willingness to use violence to maintain that position. The Noyan speaks in rapid, harsh Mongolian, his voice carrying the authority of someone who has never had his orders questioned. You can't understand the words, but the tone is unmistakable. He's conducting an interrogation, and the stakes are life and death. The man from your tent responds in the same submissive tone, his answers careful and measured. One wrong word, one suspicious response, and everyone in this tent could be dead within minutes. The social structure of the Mongol Empire is brutally simple and absolutely rigid. At the top is the Great Khan, a figure so powerful he's considered almost divine. Below him are the various Khans who rule different regions and tribes. Then the Noyans who command military units. Then the common warriors. And finally the herders and craftsmen who make up the bulk of the population. But even within these broad categories there are countless subdivisions and rankings, all maintained through a complex web of loyalty, fear, and mutual dependence. Your host family occupies a position somewhere in the middle of this hierarchy, important enough to own substantial herds and to have their opinions respected within the camp, but not so important that they can afford to anger their superiors. They're caught between the need to show hospitality to strangers, which is a sacred duty in Mongol culture, and the need to avoid suspicion from the authorities, which could result in their entire family being wiped out. The interrogation continues for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes. The Noyan's questions become more specific, more threatening, and you can hear the fear in your host's voice as he responds. He's walking a tightrope between honesty and self-preservation, trying to answer truthfully without revealing anything that might be seen as suspicious or treasonous. Finally, the Noyan seems satisfied, or at least tired of the questioning. He remounts his horse and rides away with his entourage, leaving behind an atmosphere of tension and fear that permeates the entire camp. Your host returns to the tent, his face pale and his hands shaking slightly. He's survived the encounter, but just barely, and you realize that your presence has put him in terrible danger. The elderly woman emerges from behind the blankets and speaks rapidly to her son, her voice sharp with worry and anger. You don't need to understand the words to know that she's expressing concern about the risks of harboring you. In her tone, you can hear the weight of decades of survival in a world where making the wrong decision can mean the death of everyone you love. The younger woman looks at you with undisguised hostility, and you realize that your novelty has worn off. You're no longer an interesting curiosity. You're a threat to the family's survival. In the Mongol Empire, loyalty to outsiders is a luxury that can get you killed, and your hosts are beginning to question whether helping you is worth the risk. The man sits by the fire and begins to explain, through gestures and the few words you've begun to understand, the basic rules of Mongol society. These aren't suggestions or guidelines. They're absolute laws that govern every aspect of life, and breaking them can result in immediate death. The first and most important rule is obedience to authority. When a superior gives an order, you obey without question or odyssey. Failure to comply isn't just insubordination, it's treason. The second rule is loyalty to your tribe and family. Personal desires and individual needs are always secondary to the survival and success of the group. This isn't just a moral principle, it's a practical necessity in a world where isolated individuals die quickly and brutally. The tribe provides protection, resources, and identity, And in return, you give your complete loyalty and willingness to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. The third rule is respect for the sacred customs and traditions that have kept the Mongols alive for generations. These include the proper way to enter a tent, the correct manner of addressing superiors, the appropriate behavior toward animals, and the countless other small rituals that define Mongol culture. Violating these customs isn't just rude. It's a sign that you're not truly Mongol, and outsiders are always suspect. The fourth rule is the absolute sanctity of hospitality. A guest in your tent is under your protection, and you must defend them with your life if necessary. But this protection comes with obligations. The guest must behave properly, show respect to the host family, and not bring danger to those who have sheltered them. It's a reciprocal relationship that can be broken by either side. And when it's broken, the consequences are usually fatal. The fifth rule is the supreme importance of martial skill and personal courage. A man who cannot fight is not truly a man. And a woman who cannot defend her family is not truly a woman. This isn't just about physical capability. It's about the willingness to face death without flinching, to endure pain without complaint, and to sacrifice everything for honor and duty. Cowardice is the greatest shame, and it's punished by exile or death. You begin to understand that what you initially saw as a simple nomadic society is actually a complex military organization, where every person has a specific role and every role is essential for survival. The herders aren't just tending animals, they're maintaining the logistical base that supports the most effective military machine in the world. The craftsmen aren't just making tools, they're producing the weapons and equipment that will conquer empires. The women aren't just raising children, they're training the next generation of warriors and administrators who will rule the known world. The social mobility in this system is both possible and terrifying. A common herder can rise to become a Noyan through exceptional skill and loyalty. But the same system that rewards success punishes failure with death. There's no safety net, no second chances, no forgiveness for weakness or incompetence. You succeed or you die, and there's no middle ground. The man begins to teach you the proper way to address different levels of authority. And you realize that the language itself reflects the rigid hierarchy of Mongol society. There are different words for you depending on whether you're speaking to a superior, an equal, or an inferior. Using the wrong form isn't just a grammatical error. It's a potentially fatal insult that could result in immediate punishment. The gestures and body language are equally important and equally dangerous. How you sit, how you stand, how you hold your head, how you use your hands. All of these communicate your place in the social hierarchy and your attitude toward authority. A gesture that might be considered friendly in your modern world could be interpreted as threatening or disrespectful in Mongol society, with consequences that could end your life. The younger woman demonstrates the proper way for a woman to move through the camp. Her steps careful and deliberate. She shows you how to walk so that you don't accidentally step on someone's shadow, which is considered a grave alert. She teaches you how to position yourself when entering a tent, how to sit so that you don't inadvertently point your feet toward the fire, and how to handle objects in a way that shows respect for their owner. The children, despite their young age, already understand these rules intuitively. They move through the camp with the casual confidence of people who have internalized the social structure from birth. They know exactly how to behave around different types of people, how to show respect without appearing weak, and how to assert themselves without causing offense. These are skills that would take you years to learn if you ever could. The elderly woman begins to explain the complex web of kinship and obligation that binds Mongol society together. Everyone is related to everyone else through blood, marriage, or adoption, and these relationships create a network of mutual support and shared responsibility. But they also create potential conflicts and competing loyalties that must be carefully managed to avoid violence. The concept of individual rights, as understood in modern democratic societies, simply doesn't exist in the Mongol Empire. Your life belongs to your family, your tribe, and ultimately to the Great Khan. You have no inherent right to freedom, privacy, or self-determination. These are luxuries that must be earned through service and loyalty, and they can be revoked at any moment by those who hold authority over you. The legal system is equally harsh and unforgiving. There are no lawyers, no appeals, no lengthy trials. Justice is swift and brutal, administered by whoever holds authority in a given situation. Theft is punished by death, adultery by death, treason by death. Even relatively minor offenses can result in beatings, exile, or execution, depending on the mood of the person dispensing justice. The man tells you about the yasak, the great law code established by Genghis Khan that governs every aspect of Mongol life. These laws are designed to maintain order and discipline within the empire. But they're also incredibly harsh by modern standards. The yasak prescribes death for dozens of offenses, including things like urinating in water, stepping on a threshold, or failing to share food with a guest. Religious tolerance is one of the few areas where the Mongols show flexibility. But even this is governed by strict rules. You can worship whatever gods you choose, but you must also show respect for Tengri, the eternal blue sky, and you must never interfere with the religious practices of others. More importantly, your religious beliefs must never conflict with your loyalty to the Khan or your obligations to the state. The afternoon brings a demonstration of Mongol justice that makes your blood run cold. A man from another tent has been accused of stealing a horse, and the entire camp gathers to witness his trial. There's no lengthy deliberation, no examination of evidence, no consideration of extenuating circumstances. The man is given a chance to speak, but his words are clearly not believed. The sentence is death, and it's carried out immediately. The execution is brutal and efficient. The condemned man is forced to kneel, and his head is severed with a single stroke of a curved sword. There's no ceremony, no final words, no opportunity for redemption. One moment he's alive, the next he's dead, and his body is dragged away to be thrown to the scavengers. The crowd disperses as quickly as it gathered, and life in the camp returns to normal as if nothing had happened. You're shaken by the casual brutality of what you've witnessed, but you realize that this is simply how justice works in the Mongol Empire. There's no room for mercy, no tolerance for weakness, no forgiveness for those who violate the rules that keep society functioning. The harshness of the punishment is intended to serve as a deterrent, but it's also a reflection of the harsh reality of nomadic life, where survival depends on absolute discipline and unwavering loyalty. The evening brings lessons in the subtle art of reading social cues and understanding the unspoken rules that govern interpersonal relationships. The man teaches you how to recognize when someone is angry, even when they're not showing it openly. He shows you how to interpret facial expressions, body language, and tone of voice to understand what people are really thinking and feeling. The younger woman demonstrates the complex etiquette surrounding the sharing of food and drink. Who is served first? Who gets the best portions? How to accept or decline offerings without causing offense. These are all governed by strict rules that must be followed precisely. A mistake in food etiquette can be seen as a sign of disrespect or ignorance, and either one can have serious consequences. The children show you how to play the traditional games that teach important life skills. These aren't just entertainment, they're training for the serious business of adult life. The games teach strategy, physical coordination, competitiveness, and the ability to think quickly under pressure. They also teach the importance of following rules and accepting defeat gracefully. skills that are essential for survival in a hierarchical society. As you prepare for sleep on your third night in the Mongol Empire, you realize that you've barely scratched the surface of understanding this complex society. Every interaction is governed by rules you don't fully understand. Every relationship is shaped by hierarchies you can't see. And every moment carries the potential for fatal mistakes. The social structure that seemed so simple from the outside is actually incredibly complex and unforgiving. The sounds of the camp settling down for the night have become familiar. But you're beginning to understand that even these sounds have meaning. The way people move between tents, the tone of their voices, the sounds of their activities. All of these communicate information about status, relationships, and intentions. Learning to read these signs is essential for survival, but it's also incredibly difficult for someone from outside the culture. As you drift off to sleep, you realize that surviving in the Mongol Empire isn't just about learning practical skills like riding and archery. It's about understanding and navigating a social system that's based on violence, hierarchy, and absolute loyalty. One wrong move, one social mistake, one moment of disrespect, and you could find yourself facing the same fate as the horse thief who died this afternoon. The fourth dawn in the Mongol Empire brings with it the realization that survival here isn't just about enduring individual hardships. It's about mastering a complex daily routine that has been refined over generations to maximize efficiency and minimize death. Every action, every moment, every breath is part of a carefully choreographed dance between human will and the brutal realities of steppe life. You wake before sunrise. Not because you want to, but because the rhythm of camp life demands it. The elderly woman is already moving around the fire, her movements automatic and practiced. She's been doing this routine for 60 years, and her body knows exactly what needs to be done even before her mind is fully awake. This is the difference between those who survive and those who die in the Mongol Empire. The ability to function effectively, even when exhausted, cold, and hungry. The first task of every day is rekindling the fire, and you're beginning to understand that this isn't just about warmth and cooking. Fire is life itself in this world. It provides heat that keeps you from freezing, light that allows you to work before dawn and after dusk, and the means to cook food that would otherwise kill you with parasites and disease. A family that lets their fire die is a family that has given up on survival. The woman shows you how to properly tend the fire, adding dried dung in precise amounts to maintain the right temperature for different tasks. Too hot, and you waste precious fuel. Too cool, and you can't cook food properly or generate enough heat to warm the tent. It's a skill that requires years to master, and watching her work is like watching a master craftsman at their trade. The morning milking is the next crucial task, and you discover that this isn't just about collecting milk. It's about maintaining the complex relationship between humans and animals that defines nomadic life. The mares must be milked at precisely the right time, in the right way, with the right attitude. The animals can sense fear, uncertainty, or aggression, and they respond accordingly. A nervous milker gets kicked, a rough milker gets no milk, and an incompetent milker can damage the animal's udder and reduce milk production for weeks. The man takes you through the process step by step, his hands demonstrating the proper technique, while his voice provides commentary you're only beginning to understand. The mare stands patiently while he works, her eyes alert but calm. This is a partnership that has been refined over thousands of years. The animal provides milk, the human provides protection and care, and both benefit from the arrangement. Your attempts at milking are clumsy and largely unsuccessful. The mare senses your inexperience and becomes skittish, stepping away from you and snorting with what seems like disdain. The man laughs, not unkindly, but with the amusement of someone watching a child attempt an adult task. He takes over, his experienced hands quickly filling the bucket with warm, foamy milk. The milk is immediately processed into various forms. Some is consumed fresh, some is made into cheese, and some is fermented into arrack. Nothing is wasted, because waste is a luxury that nomadic people cannot afford. The processing techniques are complex and require precise timing. Too little fermentation and the arrack won't keep; too much, and it becomes undrinkably sour. The younger woman demonstrates the art of cheese making, her hands working the curds with practiced efficiency. The process requires constant attention and precise timing, and the result is a hard, salty cheese that can be stored for months without spoiling. This is survival food at its most basic: nutritious, portable, and durable enough to last through the harshest conditions. The children's daily routine is equally demanding and far more complex than anything modern children experience. They're not just helping with chores, they're learning the skills that will keep them alive as adults. The 10-year-old boy is already proficient with a bow and can ride a horse with the casual skill of someone who learned before he could walk. The 8-year-old girl can milk a goat, make felt, and start a fire with flint and steel. Their education isn't formal in the modern sense. There are no schools, no textbooks, no structured curriculum. Instead, they learn by watching, imitating, and gradually taking on more responsibility. A child who can't master basic survival skills by adolescence is unlikely to survive to adulthood. So the learning process is intense and unforgiving. The boy shows you how to properly care for the horses, and you realize that this isn't just about feeding and watering them. Each horse has its own personality, its own needs, its own quirks that must be understood and accommodated. The relationship between a Mongol and his horse is more intimate than most modern marriages. Their lives depend on each other completely, and both must be able to anticipate the other's needs and reaction. The horses are checked for injuries, their hooves cleaned and inspected, their coats brushed to remove tangles and parasites. Any sign of illness or injury is treated immediately, because a sick horse in the Mongol Empire is a potential death sentence for its owner. The remedies are simple but effective. Poultices made from plants, careful attention to diet, and rest when possible. The morning meal is eaten quickly and efficiently, without the leisurely pace that characterizes modern breakfast routines. Everyone knows exactly what they need to do, and the meal is designed to provide maximum nutrition with minimum preparation time. The mutton stew is supplemented with dried meat, cheese, and arrack, providing a balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrates that will sustain heavy physical work throughout the day. The division of labor is strict and clearly defined. The man handles the horses and other large animals, maintains the weapons and tools, and makes decisions about where to graze the herds. The elderly woman manages the household, supervises the food preparation, and maintains the social relationships that keep the family connected to the larger community. The younger woman processes animal products, makes clothing and household items, and cares for the children. But these divisions aren't absolute. Everyone must be capable of performing multiple roles in case of emergency. The woman can ride and shoot if necessary. The man can cook and tend the fire. And the children are being trained in all aspects of nomadic life. Specialization is a luxury that nomadic people cannot afford when survival depends on adaptability and versatility. The daily routine of moving the herds is a complex choreography that requires perfect coordination between multiple family members. The animals must be moved to fresh grazing areas, protected from predators, and kept from straying too far from the camp. This isn't just herding, it's a military operation that requires strategy, timing, and the ability to respond quickly to changing conditions. You watch as the man uses a series of whistles and calls to direct the movement of hundreds of animals across the steppe. The horses respond to different signals, the cattle to others, and the sheep and goats to still other. Each type of animal has different needs and behaviors, and managing them all simultaneously requires years of experience and incredible skill. The boy demonstrates how to use a lasso, spinning the rope overhead and then casting it with accuracy that would impress a modern rodeo performer. This isn't just a useful skill, it's essential for capturing stray animals, subduing injured ones, and defending against predators. The rope is made from horsehair and leather, braided by hand to precise specifications that determine its strength and flexibility. The afternoon brings lessons in the countless small tasks that keep nomadic life functioning. You learn how to repair leather, using sinew and bone needles to mend tears in clothing and equipment. You practice knot tying, discovering that there are specific knots for different purposes, some for securing loads, others for tethering animals, still others for emergency repairs to equipment. The younger woman shows you how to make felt, the miracle material that makes life possible on the steppes. The process involves laying out raw wool, sprinkling it with hot water, and then working it with your hands until it forms a dense waterproof fabric. It's back-breaking work that takes hours, but the result is a material that's essential for clothing, tent construction, and countless other uses. The technique requires precise timing and considerable skill. Too much water, and the wool becomes soggy and unworkable. Too little and it won't felt properly. The temperature must be just right. The pressure must be applied evenly, and the process must be continued until the wool fibers have bonded into a solid mass. Your modern hands blister and crack from the work, but you begin to understand why felt is so highly valued in nomadic society. The evening routine is as complex and demanding as the morning one. The animals must be secured for the night. The fire must be properly banked, the food must be prepared for the next day, and the equipment must be cleaned and maintained. Every task is critical, and failure to perform any one of them properly can have serious consequences. The man demonstrates the proper way to clean and maintain weapons, showing you how to oil the bowstring, sharpen the arrowheads, and inspect the bow for signs of wear or damage. In the Mongol Empire, weapons aren't just tools. They're the difference between life and death, and they must be maintained with religious devotion. The younger woman teaches you how to prepare food for preservation, cutting meat into thin strips and hanging them to dry in the wind. The process requires careful attention to weather conditions, timing, and cleanliness. Meat that's not properly reared will spoil, and spoiled meat can kill you. The techniques have been refined over generations, and every family has its own slight variations that they guard jealously. The children's evening routine includes lessons in traditional stories and songs that preserve the oral history of the tribe. These aren't just entertainment, they're the repository of knowledge about genealogy, law, military tactics, and survival techniques. The stories teach moral lessons. The songs preserve important information and both help maintain the cultural identity that binds the tribe together. You listen to tales of ancient heroes and their great deeds, stories of battles won and lost, legends of gods and spirits that inhabit the natural world. The stories are told with passionate intensity, and you realize that these aren't just narratives. They're the foundation of Mongol identity and the source of the courage and determination that has made them the most successful conquerors in history. The boy demonstrates traditional wrestling techniques, showing you holds and throws that are both sport and combat training. Wrestling is considered essential for developing the strength, balance, and fighting spirit that every Mongol warrior needs. The techniques are passed down from father to son, and mastering them is a mark of manhood and social status. The girl shows you how to play the traditional games that teach important life skills. These include games of strategy that develop tactical thinking, games of chance that teach acceptance of fate, and games of skill that develop hand-eye coordination. The games are played with intensity and competitiveness that would surprise modern observers, but they're also teaching tools that prepare children for the serious business of adult life. The evening meal is another lesson in the complex social rituals that govern nomadic life. The seating arrangement reflects family hierarchy. The serving order demonstrates respect and status, and the conversation follows patterns that have been established over generations. You're learning to read the subtle signals that indicate mood, intention, and social position. The man tells you about the seasonal routines that govern nomadic life, explaining how the daily schedule changes with the weather, the availability of pasture, and the needs of the animals. Summer routines are different from winter ones, and both are different from the routines followed during the spring and fall migrations. Each season brings its own challenges and opportunities, and successful nomads must be able to adapt their daily patterns accordingly. The woman explains the complex system of reciprocal obligations that binds nomadic families together. Neighbors help with difficult tasks, share resources during hard times, and provide mutual support during emergencies. But these relationships must be carefully maintained through regular gifts, visits, and demonstrations of respect. A family that fails to maintain these relationships finds itself isolated and vulnerable. The fire is banked for the night with the same careful attention that was given to lighting it in the morning. The coals are arranged to provide steady heat throughout the night, covered with ash to prevent them from burning too quickly, and surrounded by stones to reflect heat back into the tent. This is a skill that literally means the difference between life and death on cold nights. As you prepare for sleep on your fourth night in the Mongol Empire, you realize that you've witnessed something remarkable, a way of life that's been refined over thousands of years to maximize survival in one of the world's harshest environments. Every aspect of the daily routine serves a purpose. Every task is performed with maximum efficiency, and every person knows exactly what they need to do to keep the family alive. The sounds of the camp settling down for the night have become familiar, but you're beginning to understand that even these sounds are part of the complex routine that governs nomadic life. The way people move between tents, the timing of their activities, the sounds of animals being secured for the night, all of these are part of a synchronized system that has been perfected over generations. The daily routine you've observed isn't just about survival. It's about maintaining a complex culture that values skill, courage, loyalty, and adaptability above all else. Every task teaches important lessons. Every challenge builds character. And every day is both a test and a preparation for the greater challenges that lie ahead. As you drift off to sleep, you realize that the daily routine of nomadic life is far more demanding than anything you've experienced in your modern world. There are no labor-saving devices, no shortcuts, no margin for error. Every day is a struggle against cold, hunger, disease, and death, and only those who master the countless skills and routines of nomadic life have any hope of survival. Your fifth dawn in the Mongol Empire shatters any remaining illusions about the peaceful nature of nomadic life. You wake, not to the usual sounds of camp routine, but to the thunderous pounding of war drums, echoing across the steppe. The rhythm is urgent, primal, and immediately recognizable even to your untrained ears as a call to arms. The Mongol Empire isn't just a collection of herders and nomads. It's a military machine that can transform from pastoral calm to lethal violence in a matter of minutes. The transformation of the camp is immediate and terrifying. The elderly woman who had been calmly tending the fire moments before is now moving with military precision, packing essential supplies into leather bags with practiced efficiency. Her movements are those of someone who has done this countless times before, who knows that the difference between life and death often comes down to how quickly you can prepare for war. The man emerges from the tent already armed, his bow strung and a quiver of arrows slung across his back. His face has changed completely. Gone is the patient teacher who had been showing you daily routines, replaced by a warrior whose eyes hold the cold calculation of someone who has killed many times before. This is the true face of the Mongol Empire, and it's absolutely terrifying. The younger woman is strapping on armor made from layers of leather and metal plates. Her movements quick and efficient. The armor isn't heavy like the full-plate mail of European knights. It's designed for mobility and protection while riding at high speed. Each piece has been crafted specifically for her body, fitted to provide maximum protection without restricting her ability to draw a bow or wield a sword. The children are also preparing for war, but their role is different from the adults. They're packing the most valuable possessions onto pack animals, securing the livestock, and preparing to flee if necessary. Even the youngest child knows exactly what to do, moving with the same deadly efficiency as the adults. This isn't their first experience with war. It's simply another part of life in the Mongol Empire. You watch in fascination and horror as the peaceful camp transforms into a military base. Weapons appear from seemingly nowhere. Swords, bows, lances, and armor that had been carefully stored, but kept ready for immediate use. The horses are saddled with military equipment, their peaceful grazing harnesses replaced with war gear designed for speed and maneuverability in combat. The man hands you a sword, and you realize that in the Mongol Empire, there are no non-combatants. Everyone who is physically capable is expected to fight, and those who cannot fight are expected to support those who can. The sword is heavier than you expected, its curved blade designed for slashing attacks from horseback. The weight feels alien in your hands, and you know that your complete lack of training makes you more of a liability than an asset. The sword's design is deceptively simple but incredibly effective. The curved blade is perfect for cutting through armor and flesh while riding at high speed. The crossguard protects your hand from enemy weapons, and the grip is shaped to provide maximum control even when your hands are numb with cold or slippery with blood. This isn't just a weapon, it's a tool that has been refined over generations to maximize killing efficiency. The man demonstrates the basic techniques of sword fighting, but his instruction is rushed and incomplete. There's no time for proper training, no opportunity to practice the complex skills that take years to master. You are expected to learn by doing, and the penalty for failure is death. The techniques he shows you are brutal and direct. No fancy moves or elaborate swordplay, just efficient methods for killing your enemies before they can kill you. The bow is even more challenging. The composite bow used by the Mongols is a marvel of engineering, made from layers of wood, horn, and sinew that have been carefully laminated together over months of work. It's incredibly powerful, capable of driving arrows through armor at ranges that would be impressive even by modern standards. But it's also incredibly difficult to use effectively, requiring strength, skill, and years of practice. Drawing the bow requires not just arm strength but coordination between your back, shoulders, and core muscles. The draw weight is enormous, probably well over 100 pounds, and holding it steady while aiming requires endurance that you simply don't possess. Your attempts to draw the bow are embarrassing and futile, and you realize that archery isn't just a skill in the Mongol Empire, it's a way of life that must be learned from childhood. The arrows are works of art in themselves, each one carefully crafted for specific purposes. There are bodkins for piercing armor, broadheads for killing unarmored targets, and fire arrows for setting enemy equipment ablaze. The fletching is made from eagle feathers, chosen for their ability to stabilize the arrow in flight. The nocks are perfectly shaped to fit the bowstring, and the points are sharp enough to shave with. The younger woman demonstrates the proper technique for shooting from horseback, her movements fluid and practiced. She nocks an arrow, draws the bow, and releases in one smooth motion while her horse gallops across the steppe. The arrow flies true, striking a target 50 yards away with deadly accuracy. This is the skill that has made the Mongol Empire the most feared military force in the world. Your attempts at mounted archery are disastrous. You can barely stay on the horse, much less draw a bow while riding. The horse's movement throws off your balance, The wind affects your aim, and the complexity of coordinating multiple skills simultaneously is overwhelming. You begin to understand why Mongol warriors train from childhood. These aren't skills that can be learned quickly or easily. The armor you're given is lighter than you expected, but still incredibly effective. It's made from layers of leather, hardened with lacquer, reinforced with metal plates at critical points. The design allows for maximum mobility while providing protection against the most common weapons of the time. The helmet is particularly ingenious, with a design that deflects blows while providing good visibility and ventilation. Putting on the armor is a complex process that requires help from others. Each piece must be fitted properly. Each strap must be tightened to the correct tension, and each joint must allow for full range of motion. The armor is designed to be worn for hours at a time, and it must be comfortable enough to allow for the strenuous physical activity of combat. The man explains the basic tactics of Mongol warfare, using gestures and simple words to convey concepts that would normally take years to understand. The Mongols don't fight like European knights, charging directly at their enemies in heavy armor. Instead, they use mobility, deception, and psychological warfare to defeat opponents who are often larger and better equipped. The classic Mongol tactic is the feigned retreat, where warriors appear to flee in panic, but are actually leading their enemies into a carefully prepared trap. The discipline required to execute this tactic is enormous. Warriors must be willing to appear cowardly, to endure taunts and insults from their enemies, and to trust completely in their commander's ability to coordinate the maneuver. The siege techniques are equally sophisticated. The Mongols have learned to use Chinese engineers and Persian craftsmen to build siege engines that can breach the strongest fortifications. They understand the psychological impact of surrounding a city and cutting off its supplies, and they're masters of the art of negotiation and intimidation that can sometimes win battles without fighting. The psychological aspects of Mongol warfare are perhaps the most terrifying. They deliberately cultivate a reputation for ruthlessness and brutality, using terror as a weapon to demoralize their enemies before battle even begins. Cities that surrender are often spared, while those that resist are completely destroyed as an example to others. The man tells you about the decimal system that organizes Mongol armies, where units are organized into groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. This system allows for incredible flexibility and coordination, enabling massive armies to maneuver with the precision of much smaller units. Every warrior knows his place in the hierarchy and his role in the overall strategy. The communication system used by Mongol armies is equally impressive. Messages are transmitted across vast distances using a network of mounted messengers who can cover hundreds of miles in a day. Signal fires, drums, and horns are used to coordinate movements and transmit orders across the battlefield. The system is so efficient that commanders can maintain control of forces spread across hundreds of miles. The training regimen for Mongol warriors is brutal and unforgiving. Young men are expected to master not just fighting skills but also the arts of logistics, engineering, and administration that are necessary for managing a vast empire. They must learn to function on minimal sleep, to endure extreme weather conditions, and to maintain their equipment under the harshest circumstances. The weapons training goes far beyond simply learning to use a bow and sword. Warriors must master the lance for cavalry charges, the mace for close combat, and various specialized weapons for siege warfare. They must also learn to use captured enemy weapons, since Mongol armies often incorporate the best military technology from their conquered territories. The afternoon brings actual combat training, and you realize that Mongol warfare isn't just about individual fighting skills. It's about coordinated group action that requires perfect timing and communication. The men practice cavalry charges, wheeling and turning in formation with the precision of a modern military unit. The horses are as much a part of the training as the riders, responding to leg pressure and weight shifts that leave the rider's hands free to use weapons. The mock battles are intense and realistic, with warriors using blunted weapons to practice the techniques they'll use in real combat. The action is fast and brutal, with no allowance for weakness or hesitation. Men are injured during training, but this is considered preferable to being killed in actual battle because of inadequate preparation. The women's role in warfare is different, but equally important. They're trained in archery and can defend the camp if necessary, but their primary responsibility is maintaining the logistical support that keeps the army functioning. They manage the supply lines, care for the wounded, and maintain the equipment that warriors depend on for survival. The siege warfare training is particularly sophisticated. The men learn to use catapults, trebuchets, and other siege engines with the skill of professional engineers. They practice techniques for undermining walls, scaling fortifications, and coordinating attacks on multiple fronts simultaneously. The Mongols have learned these techniques from Chinese and Persian engineers, and they've adapted them to their own tactical needs. The evening brings lessons in the psychological aspects of warfare. The man explains how the Mongols use propaganda, intimidation, and terror to weaken their enemies before battle. They understand that defeating an enemy's will to fight is often more important than defeating their physical forces, and they've developed sophisticated techniques for psychological warfare. The concept of total war is fundamental to Mongol military thinking. They don't just defeat enemy armies, they destroy enemy societies, relocating populations, destroying cities, and eliminating the economic and social structures that support resistance. This isn't just brutality for its own sake. It's a systematic approach to conquest that ensures defeated enemies cannot rise again. The intelligence gathering system used by the Mongols is remarkably sophisticated. They use merchants, diplomats, and travelers to gather information about enemy strengths and weaknesses. They study the political divisions within enemy societies and exploit these divisions to their advantage. They understand the importance of knowing their enemy's capabilities, his intentions, and vulnerabilities. The logistics of Mongol warfare are as impressive as their tactics. They can move vast armies across enormous distances, maintaining supply lines that stretch for thousands of miles. They've developed techniques for living off the land, for finding water in desert regions, and for maintaining their equipment under the harshest conditions. The naval warfare capabilities of the Mongols are less well known, but equally impressive. They've learned to use Chinese shipbuilding techniques and navigation skills to project power across water barriers. Their attempts to invade Japan demonstrate their willingness to adapt their land-based tactics to maritime environments. The night brings war councils where strategy is discussed and plans are made. Man explains the complex decision-making process that determines when and how to fight, when to retreat, and when to negotiate. The Mongols are pragmatic warriors who understand that victory is more important than glory, and they're willing to use any means necessary to achieve their objectives. As you prepare for sleep on your 5th night in the Mongol Empire, you realize that you've witnessed something that's both terrifying and impressive. A military system that combines individual skill with group coordination, traditional tactics with innovative technology, and ruthless efficiency with strategic thinking. The Mongol Empire isn't just a collection of nomadic tribes, it's a war machine that has conquered a significant portion of the known world. The sounds of the camp settling down for the night are different now. Instead of the peaceful sounds of herding and domestic life, you hear the sounds of weapons being maintained, armor being adjusted, and men discussing tactics and strategy. The war drums have stopped, but their message lingers in the air like a threat that could be activated at any moment. The violence you've witnessed and prepared for isn't just a part of Mongol life. It's the foundation of their entire society. Every skill, every routine, every relationship is ultimately connected to their ability to wage war effectively. The peaceful herding life you initially observed is just the logistical support system for a military machine that can be activated with devastating effect. As you drift off to sleep, you realize that surviving in the Mongol Empire isn't just about enduring hardship or learning practical skills. It's about accepting a level of violence and brutality that would be unthinkable in your modern world. The Mongols aren't just warriors, they're the most effective killing machine in human history. And everyone in their society is either a part of that machine or a victim of it. Your sixth morning in the Mongol Empire begins with a sound that chills your blood. The low, anguished moaning of someone in terrible pain. The elderly woman who had been your guide and protector is lying on her sleeping furs, her face gray with agony and her body racked with violent shivering. In your modern world, this would mean a trip to the emergency room, antibiotics, and professional medical care. In the Mongol Empire, it means you're about to witness the brutal reality of medieval medicine and the thin line between life and death that every person walks every day. The man kneels beside his mother, his weathered hands moving over her body with the careful attention of someone who has seen this before. He's not a doctor in any sense you would recognize. There are no medical schools in the Mongol Empire, no licensing boards, no scientific understanding of disease. But he's a survivor, and survivors learn to recognize the signs of the countless ailments that can kill you in this harsh world. The woman's symptoms are terrifying in their severity. Her fever is so high that her skin burns to the touch. Her breathing is labored and irregular, and her eyes have the glassy, unfocused look of someone whose mind is being consumed by illness. She's suffering from what might be pneumonia, or typhus, or any of the dozen other diseases that sweep through nomadic camps like invisible armies, killing indiscriminately and leaving survivors to wonder who will be next. The younger woman brings water and cloth, beginning the only treatment available, keeping the patient as comfortable as possible while her body fights the infection. There are no antibiotics, no IV fluids, no oxygen masks. The family can only provide basic comfort and hope that their loved one's constitution is strong enough to overcome whatever is attacking her from within. You watch in horror as the woman's condition deteriorates throughout the morning. Her fever spikes higher, her breathing becomes more difficult, and her periods of consciousness become shorter and more confused. The family members take turns sitting with her, offering water when she can swallow, adjusting her position to ease her breathing, and maintaining the constant vigil that is the only medical care available. The man sends the boy to fetch the camp's shaman, and you realize that spiritual healing is considered as important as any physical treatment. The shaman arrives within hours, an ancient man whose face is marked by ritual scars and whose eyes hold the intense focus of someone who has spent decades learning to navigate the boundary between life and death. The shaman's arrival transforms the tent into a place of ritual and mystery. He carries a drum made from horsehide and a collection of objects that have been gathered from across the steppe: bones, stones, feathers, and dried plants that represent the spiritual tools of his trade. His presence brings both hope and fear, because everyone knows that shamanic healing is as likely to fail as to succeed. The healing ritual begins with drumming and chanting, the shaman's voice rising and falling in patterns that seem to echo the rhythms of the natural world. The sound is hypnotic and somehow comforting, but it's also alien to your modern sensibilities. This isn't medicine as you understand it. It's a spiritual practice that treats illness as a manifestation of supernatural forces rather than biological processes. The shaman examines the woman's body with his hands, not looking for physical symptoms, but for spiritual imbalances that might be causing her illness. He presses various points on her body, muttering incantations, and occasionally shaking his head as if he's encountering resistance from invisible forces. His diagnosis is delivered in terms that have no modern equivalent: evil spirits, soul sickness, offended ancestors. The prescribed treatment is equally mysterious. The shaman prepares a mixture of herbs and animal parts, grinding them together while chanting over the mixture. The resulting potion is thick and dark with a smell that makes your stomach turn. The woman is forced to drink it, though she can barely swallow in her weakened state. The shaman assures the family that this will drive out the evil spirits, but you can see the doubt in their eyes. The herbal remedies used by the Mongols are actually more sophisticated than you initially realize. Many of the plants they use have genuine medicinal properties: willow bark for pain relief, various roots for digestive problems, and molds that contain primitive antibiotics. But the knowledge is mixed with superstition and ritual, and the dosages are often dangerously unpredictable. The shaman also performs a ritual purification of the tent, burning various substances and chanting over the smoke. The smoke is acrid and choking, and you realize that the ritual is as much about psychological comfort as spiritual healing. The family needs to feel that they're doing everything possible to help their loved one, even if the treatments are largely ineffective. The afternoon brings a consultation with the camp's bone setter, a man who specializes in treating injuries and physical ailments. He examines the woman's body with the practical eye of someone who has seen countless injuries and illnesses. His diagnosis is more realistic than the shaman's. He recognizes that the woman is suffering from a severe infection that may be beyond any treatment they can provide. The bone setter's remedies are more practical, but equally primitive. He prepares poultices from various plants and animal fats, applies them to the woman's chest and back, and instructs the family on how to position her to ease her breathing. His treatments are based on generations of trial and error rather than scientific understanding, but they represent the best medical knowledge available in the Mongol Empire. The man tells you about the various diseases that plague nomadic life, and you realize that illness is a constant threat that can strike anyone at any time. Pneumonia, dysentery, typhus, and countless other diseases spread rapidly through camps where people live in close quarters with poor sanitation. The mortality rate is staggering. Probably half of all children die before reaching adulthood, and adult life expectancy is probably less than 40 years. The injuries common to nomadic life are equally devastating. Horse-related accidents are frequent and often fatal, since there are no modern surgical techniques to treat internal injuries or compound fractures. Falls from horses can result in spinal injuries that leave victims paralyzed, and infected wounds can kill healthy adults within days. The woman's condition continues to deteriorate throughout the afternoon. Her fever remains dangerously high, her breathing becomes increasingly labored, and her periods of consciousness become shorter and more confused. The family maintains their vigil, but you can see the resignation in their eyes. They've seen this before, and they know how it usually ends. The evening brings a crisis, as the woman's breathing becomes so difficult that she can barely get air into her lungs. The family gathers around her, and you realize that you're witnessing the final stages of what is probably pneumonia or another respiratory infection. In your modern world, this would be a medical emergency requiring immediate hospitalization. In the Mongol Empire, it's simply another death waiting to happen. The man holds his mother's hand as she struggles for breath, his face showing the controlled grief of someone who has learned to accept death as a natural part of life. The younger woman and children cluster around the dying woman, their faces showing the same mixture of love and acceptance. Death isn't hidden or denied in the Mongol Empire. It's acknowledged as the inevitable end of every life. The woman dies just before midnight, her breathing simply stopping as her exhausted body finally succumbs to the infection. There are no heroic measures, no desperate attempts at resuscitation, no dramatic medical interventions. She simply dies quietly and surrounded by her family, in the same tent where she had lived her entire adult life. The family's response to death is both practical and spiritual. The body must be prepared for burial according to traditional customs, The tent must be purified to prevent the spread of disease, and the family must begin the grieving process that will help them accept their loss and move forward with their lives. The burial preparation is a complex ritual that reflects the Mongol understanding of death and the afterlife. The body is washed and dressed in the woman's finest clothes. Her personal possessions are arranged around her, and various ritual objects are placed with her to help her journey to the next world. The process is both reverent and practical, reflecting the deep respect the Mongols have for their ancestors. The burial itself takes place the next morning, with the entire camp gathering to pay their respects. The grave is dug by hand, and the body is placed in it along with various grave goods that are believed to be needed in the afterlife. The ceremony is brief but meaningful, and you realize that death is accepted as a natural part of life rather than something to be feared or avoided. The man explains the Mongol understanding of disease and death, and you realize that their worldview is fundamentally different from modern medical science. They believe that illness is often caused by spiritual imbalances, that some people are more susceptible to disease because of their spiritual condition, and that healing requires addressing both physical and spiritual aspects of illness. The practical aspects of medical care in the Mongol Empire are equally challenging. There are no hospitals, no trained physicians, no reliable supplies of medicines or medical equipment. Each family must be largely self-sufficient in dealing with illness and injury, and the knowledge they possess is passed down through generations of oral tradition. The surgical techniques available to the Mongols are primitive and dangerous. Wound treatment involves cleaning with various liquids and applying poultices, but there's no understanding of antisepsis or infection control. Broken bones are set by hand and splinted with wood and leather, but there's no way to treat complex fractures or internal injuries. The pain management techniques are equally limited. The Mongols use various plant-based remedies for pain relief, including alcohol and opium-based preparations. But these are often as dangerous as the conditions they're meant to treat. Many people simply learn to endure pain as a normal part of life. The mental health challenges faced by nomadic people are largely unrecognized and untreated. The constant stress of survival, the trauma of warfare and violence, and the grief of losing family members to disease and accidents all take their toll. But there's no concept of mental illness as distinct from spiritual problems, and treatment is largely ritualistic rather than therapeutic. The reproductive health challenges are particularly severe for women. Childbirth is dangerous and often fatal, with no professional medical assistance available. Many women die in childbirth, and infant mortality rates are staggeringly high. The surviving women often suffer from complications that affect their health for the rest of their lives. The nutritional deficiencies common in nomadic life contribute to poor health and increased susceptibility to disease. The diet is high in protein and fat, but often lacks essential vitamins and minerals. Scurvy, rickets, and other deficiency diseases are common, and these conditions make people more vulnerable to infections and other illnesses. The dental health of nomadic people is generally poor, with tooth decay and gum disease being common problems. There are no dentists or dental treatments available, and people often lose most of their teeth by middle age. Dental infections can be life-threatening, and many people die from complications related to dental problems. The hygiene practices of nomadic people are limited by the availability of water and the harsh living conditions. Bathing is infrequent and often impractical, and clothing is worn for long periods without washing. These conditions contribute to the spread of disease and increase the risk of skin infections and other hygiene-related problems. The man tells you about the various epidemics that have swept through nomadic camps, killing hundreds of people in a matter of days. These diseases spread rapidly through the close-knit communities and often leave entire families dead. The survivors must somehow continue with their lives, caring for orphaned children and maintaining the herds that are essential for survival. The seasonal health challenges are equally daunting. Winter brings increased risk of respiratory infections, frostbite, and accidents related to ice and snow. Summer brings heat-related illnesses, insect-borne diseases, and problems related to food spoilage. Each season has its own health risks that must be managed with primitive medical knowledge and limited resources. The afternoon brings a visit from another family whose child is suffering from what appears to be dysentery. The child is severely dehydrated and weakening rapidly, and the family has come seeking help from anyone who might have knowledge of treatment. The man does what he can, offering herbs and advice, but you can see that he holds little hope for the child's recovery. The evening brings reflection on the harsh realities of medical care in the Mongol Empire. You realize that the average person faces health challenges that would be easily treatable in your modern world, but are often fatal in this harsh environment. The lack of medical knowledge, the absence of effective treatments, and the constant exposure to disease and injury make every day a struggle for survival. As you prepare for sleep on your 6th night in the Mongol Empire, you're haunted by the death you've witnessed and the suffering you've observed. The elderly woman who had been your guide and protector is gone, claimed by an illness that could have been easily treated with modern medicine. Her death is a stark reminder of how fragile life is in this harsh world and how fortunate you are to live in an age of advanced medical care. The sounds of the camp settling down for the night are subdued, reflecting the grief and uncertainty that death brings to any community. But life must go on, and the surviving family members are already beginning to adjust to their new reality. The woman's death is mourned, but it's also accepted as part of the natural order of things. As you drift off to sleep, you realize that surviving in the Mongol Empire isn't just about avoiding immediate dangers like warfare or accidents. It's about maintaining your health in an environment where medical care is primitive and often ineffective. Every day that you remain healthy is a victory, and every illness or injury is a potential death sentence. Your 7th morning in the Mongol Empire dawns with the brutal clarity of accumulated understanding. As you lie on your felt mattress, listening to the familiar sounds of the camp stirring to life, you realize that you haven't just survived a week in the 13th century. You've been systematically stripped of every comfort, every assumption, every taken-for-granted luxury that defines modern existence. The person who arrived here 7 days ago would be unrecognizable to you now, and the person you've become would be equally alien to your modern self. The morning routine begins, as always, with the rekindling of the fire. But now you understand that this simple act represents the difference between civilization and chaos. In your modern world, warmth is a matter of adjusting a thermostat. But here it requires skill, patience, and constant attention. The elderly woman who had performed this task with such grace is gone, claimed by pneumonia that could have been cured with a simple course of antibiotics. Her death weighs heavily on the family, but life continues because it must. The man who has become your reluctant teacher moves through his morning tasks with the same methodical precision you've observed all week. But there's a new gravity to his movements. He's now the sole adult male in the household, responsible for the survival of his wife, children, and the strange foreigner who has brought nothing but complications to his life. The burden is enormous, and you can see it in the way he shoulders his responsibilities without complaint or hesitation. The younger woman has assumed many of the elderly woman's duties. Her movements quick and efficient as she tends the fire, prepares the morning meal, and organizes the day's activities. She's pregnant, you realize, her condition barely visible beneath the layers of traditional clothing, but evident in the way she moves and the protective attention her husband pays to her. In your modern world, pregnancy is a medical condition requiring professional care. Here, it's simply another challenge to be managed alongside all the others. The children have grown more distant from you as the week progressed, their initial curiosity replaced by the practical understanding that you're a liability rather than an asset. They've watched you struggle with every task, fail at every skill, and require constant supervision to avoid injuring yourself or others. In their young minds, you've been categorized as someone who consumes resources without contributing value. A dangerous classification in a world where survival depends on everyone pulling their weight. The morning meal is the same mutton stew and fermented mare's milk you've been choking down all week. But now you understand the complex calculations behind every mouthful. The meat represents the life of an animal that could have been kept alive to produce milk, wool, or offspring. The milk represents the productivity of mares that must be carefully managed to maintain the herd's health. Nothing is wasted because waste equals death, and every calorie must be maximized to sustain life in this harsh environment. The man attempts to continue your education, but both of you know it's largely futile. You've made some progress in understanding basic survival skills, but your modern hands are still soft, your modern muscles still weak, and your modern mind still recoils from the brutal realities of nomadic life. You can barely milk a mare, you can't draw a bow, you can't ride a horse competently, and you can't perform any of the countless tasks that are essential for survival. The horse that had been limping earlier in the week has recovered, but another animal has developed what appears to be a respiratory infection. The man examines it with the same careful attention he gave to his dying mother, but his options are limited. There are no veterinarians in the Mongol Empire, no animal hospitals, no antibiotics for livestock. The animal will either recover on its own or die, and the family will have to accept whatever outcome fate provides. The weapons training continues, but your lack of progress is becoming increasingly apparent. You can barely hold a sword properly, much less use it effectively in combat. Your archery skills are non-existent, your horsemanship is laughable, and your understanding of military tactics is primitive. In a world where martial prowess determines survival, you're utterly helpless. The man continues the lessons out of duty and perhaps pity, but you can see the resignation in his eyes. The afternoon brings a visit from the Noyan, who had interrogated the family earlier in the week. This time, his attention is focused directly on you, and you realize that your presence in the camp has become a problem that requires resolution. The man explains your situation as best he can, but his words are careful and measured. He's walking a dangerous line between honesty and self-preservation. The Noyan's questions are sharp and probing, delivered in a tone that suggests he's already made up his mind about your fate. You don't need to understand the language to recognize the signs: the way he sits, the way he looks at you, the way his hand rests casually on his sword hilt. This is a man who has killed many times before, and he's evaluating whether you represent a threat that needs to be eliminated. The man's responses become increasingly desperate. As the interrogation continues, he's trying to convince the Noyan that you're harmless, that you pose no threat to the tribe or the empire. But you can see that his arguments are falling on deaf ears. In the Mongol Empire, strangers are inherently suspicious, and strangers who can't contribute to the group's survival are expendable. The Noyan's decision is delivered with the casual brutality that characterizes all aspects of Mongol justice. You don't understand the words, but the man's reaction tells you everything you need to know. His face goes pale, his shoulders slump, and he begins what sounds like a desperate plea for mercy. But the Noyan's expression doesn't change, and his hand moves closer to his weapon. The younger woman gasps and places a protective hand on her swollen belly, understanding that her husband's association with you has put their entire family at risk. The children huddle closer to their parents, their young faces reflecting the fear and uncertainty that pervades the tent. You realize that your presence here hasn't just been inconvenient, it's been potentially fatal for the people who showed you kindness. The Noyan stands and moves toward you, his intention clear. In your modern world, this would be the moment for negotiation, for legal representation, for appeals to higher authority. But in the Mongol Empire, justice is fixed and final. There are no lawyers, no appeals, no second chances. The Noyan's sword begins to slide from its sheath, and you realize that your week-long education in nomadic life is about to end with a lesson in nomadic death. But something unexpected happens. The man throws himself between you and the Noyan, his voice rising in what sounds like passionate argument. He's risking his own life to protect you, and you can't understand why. You've been nothing but a burden to his family, a source of danger and complication. But some code of honor, some sense of duty, compels him to risk everything for a stranger who has brought nothing but trouble. The argument continues for several minutes, with the man's voice growing more desperate, and the Noyan's responses becoming more impatient. Finally, the Noyan sheathes his sword and delivers what sounds like a final ultimatum. The man nods reluctantly, his face showing the strain of whatever bargain he's just made. The Noyan leaves, but the atmosphere in the tent remains tense and fearful. The man explains the situation through gestures and the few words you've learned. You're to be taken to the edge of the tribal territory and abandoned there. It's not execution, but it's effectively the same thing. A person alone on the steppes in winter without proper clothing, weapons, or survival skills is a corpse waiting to happen. The man has bought you a few hours of life, but he's also ensured that your death will be slower and more agonizing than a quick sword stroke. The realization of what's about to happen hits you like a physical blow. You're going to die alone and abandoned, in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. All the survival skills you've failed to master, all the knowledge you've been unable to absorb, all the adaptations you've been unable to make, they're all going to be tested in the ultimate examination, and you know you're going to fail. The family begins to prepare for your departure, their movements subdued and reluctant. The woman packs some food and water, though she knows it will only delay the inevitable. The man gives you his second-best knife, a gesture of kindness that might buy you a few extra hours of life. The children watch silently, understanding that they're witnessing a death sentence being carried out. As you prepare to leave the tent that has been your home for a week, you look back at the life you've observed and tried unsuccessfully to join. The felt walls, the central fire, the smell of horse dung and fermented milk, all of these have become familiar, almost comforting. But you know now that they were never truly yours, that you were always an outsider looking in at a world you could never truly understand or master. The man leads you to the edge of the camp, where a horse waits to carry you to your fate. But as you mount the animal, you realize that even this simple act, something you've practiced all week, is still beyond your capabilities. The horse senses your incompetence and becomes skittish, and you nearly fall off before the journey even begins. It's a final reminder of how unprepared you are for the world you're about to face alone. The ride to the tribal boundary is conducted in silence, with the man's face showing the strain of what he's been forced to do. He's a good man who has shown you kindness, but he's also a realist who understands that your survival is less important than his family's safety. When you reach the designated spot, an empty stretch of steppe that looks identical to every other empty stretch you've seen, he helps you dismount and hands you the meager supplies the family has provided. The man's farewell is brief and formal, delivered in words you don't understand but with emotion that transcends language. He's saying goodbye to someone he knows is about to die, and the weight of that knowledge is evident in his voice. Then he mounts his horse and rides away, leaving you alone with the wind, the cold, and the terrible certainty of what's about to happen. As you watch him disappear into the distance, you realize that your week in the Mongol Empire has been a comprehensive education in human limitations. You've learned that survival isn't just about having the right tools or knowing the right techniques. It's about being born into a world that has shaped you from birth to meet its challenges. You've learned that comfort and security aren't natural states, but extraordinary achievements that require constant effort and vigilance to maintain. The modern world that created you, with its climate-controlled buildings, its abundant food supply, its professional medical care, its complex legal systems, is revealed to be a miraculous accomplishment that protects you from realities you're not equipped to handle. The simple act of turning a thermostat, ordering food delivery, or calling an ambulance represents the culmination of thousands of years of human development and the cooperation of millions of people you'll never meet. The night falls with the terrible finality of a door closing forever. You're alone on the steps with no fire, no shelter, no companions, and no hope of rescue. The temperature drops rapidly, and you realize that hypothermia will probably claim you before hunger or thirst can. It's a small mercy, but mercy nonetheless. As you lie on the frozen ground, looking up at stars that seem impossibly distant and cold, you think about the family that took you in and the civilization that created you. The Mongols who live in this harsh world aren't cruel or primitive. They're magnificently adapted to an environment that would kill you in hours. They've developed skills, knowledge, and cultural practices that allow them to not just survive, but to thrive in conditions that represent the outer limits of human endurance. Your modern world, with all its technology and complexity, has made you soft in ways you never realized. You've been protected from cold, hunger, disease, and violence to such an extent that you've lost the basic skills that kept humans alive for millennia. You're a hothouse flower trying to survive in a blizzard, a digital native lost in an analog world. The irony is overwhelming. You live in an age of unprecedented human achievement, with access to knowledge, tools, and resources that would seem miraculous to the Mongols. But all of that advancement has come at the cost of resilience, adaptability, and the fundamental skills that define human survival. You're more educated than anyone in the Mongol Empire, but you're also more helpless. The final lesson of your week in the Mongol Empire is the most important one. The human capacity for adaptation has limits, and those limits are defined by the environment that shapes us. You were shaped by a world of abundance, safety, and technological support. The Mongols were shaped by a world of scarcity, danger, and natural hostility. Neither of you could survive in the other's world, because survival isn't just about individual capability. It's about the perfect matching of human adaptation to environmental challenge. As consciousness fades and the cold claims you, your last thought is one of gratitude. Not for the life you're losing, but for the life you lived. The modern world that created you, with all its flaws and complications, is a masterpiece of human cooperation and ingenuity. The fact that you couldn't survive a week in the Mongol Empire isn't a failure. It's proof that humanity has succeeded in creating something better, something that protects the weak and supports the vulnerable. The Mongol Empire was magnificent in its own way, a testament to human adaptability and the power of culture to shape survival. But it was also brutal, unforgiving, and ultimately limited by the harsh realities of its environment. Your world, imperfect as it is, represents the triumph of human ingenuity over those limitations. You wouldn't last a day in the Mongol Empire, but in your own world, you don't have to. And that, perhaps, is the greatest achievement of all. The stars wheel overhead, cold and distant, as your story ends where it began, with the recognition that survival is not just about individual strength or knowledge, but about the perfect alignment of human capability with environmental demand. The Mongols mastered their world, you've mastered yours. And the fact that neither mastery translates across time and space is not a failure, but a testament to the incredible diversity of human adaptation. In the end, you wouldn't last a day in the Mongol Empire because you were never meant to. You were meant to live in a world of warmth and plenty, of safety and support, of knowledge and compassion. The fact that such a world exists, that humanity has managed to create it against all odds, is perhaps the most remarkable achievement in the history of our species. You died in the cold of the 13th century, but you lived in the warmth of the 21st, and that warmth was worth everything.